On Joseph Conrad and the Heart of Darkness. Joseph Conrad was a Polish-British writer, born on 3 December 1857 in the city of Berdychev in Ukraine, which was then part of the Russian Empire and previously had been a part of the Polish crown. Conrad is widely regarded as one of the greatest novelists in the English language. Conrad was the only child of Eva Bobrovska and Apollo Korzeniowski, who was a poet, playwright, translator, and political activist. Conrad's family had a history of playing an important role in the struggles to gain independence for Poland from Russian rule. His father was a clandestine political activist belonging to the Red faction and sought to re-establish the pre-partition boundaries of Poland and advocated land reforms and the abolition of serfdom. In 1861, when Conrad was 3 years old, his father was arrested and imprisoned in Pavilion X after joining the Polish resistance against the Russian Empire in Warsaw. In 1863, the family was sent to Chernihiv in northeast Ukraine after his father's sentence was commuted. 2 years later, when Conrad was only 7 years old, his mother died of tuberculosis. After the death of his mother, Conrad's father took up the responsibility of teaching his son at home by introducing him to Polish Romantic poets such as Adam Mickiewicz and Slowacki. Through Shakespeare, the young Conrad was introduced to English literature, and through Victor Hugo, he was introduced to French literature. Conrad frequently traveled and moved about with his father to different regions such as Lwów, Krakow, and several other localities. In May 1869, when Conrad was only 11 years old, his father died from tuberculosis. Conrad was placed in the care of his maternal uncle Tadeusz Bobrovsky, who became his mentor and benefactor. Conrad was always suffering from poor health due to nervousness and anxiety. He was also not a good student and was mostly tutored privately as he did not attend any school regularly. Thinking that some kind of work or trade might instill in the young Conrad some discipline, his uncle wanted him to work as a sailor cum businessman. By then, Conrad had read several books by explorers and navy officers and became obsessed with nautical stories and adventures. At the mere age of 13, he wished to become a sailor. By the time he was 15, his extensive reading had also inspired him to become a writer. When Conrad was 16 years old, his uncle sent him to Marseille, France for his merchant marine career on French merchant ships. This was the beginning of his maritime career that would go on to influence his greatest literary works. In the year 1890, Joseph Conrad was appointed by a Belgian trading company to serve on one of its steamers on a journey up the Congo River, previously known as the Zaire River. While sailing up the Congo River from one station to another, the captain of the steamer fell ill and Conrad assumed command in his place. Conrad guided the ship up the tributary Lualaba River to the trading company's innermost station in Kindu, a city in the eastern Congo Free State, present-day province of Maniema. This trip on the Congo River would be the inspiration for his 1899 novella, his masterpiece, Heart of Darkness. In the novella, a sailor named Charles Marlowe narrates to his listeners the story of his assignment as a steamer captain for a Belgian ivory trading company in the African interior. The object of Marlowe's expedition on the unnamed river is to find an ivory trader named Kurtz, who is working on a trading station far up the river and has gone native. Kurtz is said to have hurt the company's business in the region due to his unsound methods. The journey to Kurtz's station takes Marlowe and his group of 60 men 2 months. On their way to the river station, the steamboat is attacked by a barrage of arrows, and the helmsman is killed. Marlowe sounds the steam whistle multiple times to frighten the attackers away. After arriving at Kurtz's camp, Marlowe learns that Kurtz is seriously ill and that the natives worship him. Marlowe begins to suspect that Kurtz has gone mad. While observing Kurtz's station, Marlowe sees a row of posts with the severed heads of natives on them. Then he notices Kurtz being carried on a stretcher by his supporters toward the steamer while the area fills up with natives ready for battle to prevent Kurtz from being taken away. Kurtz shouts something at them and they retreat. After Kurtz is laid out in the cabin of the steamer, he suspects the company wants to kill him. Marlowe confirms that hangings were discussed. The next day as they head back down the river, Kurtz's health becomes worse, and the steamboat suffers a breakdown. While the steamboat is being repaired, Kurtz hands over to Marlowe a packet of papers, including his commissioned report and a photograph, and tells him to keep them from the manager. A short while later, the manager's boy announces to the crew that Kurtz has died. Upon returning to Europe, many callers come to Marlowe to retrieve the papers Kurtz gave him, but Marlowe withholds them or offers papers he knows they have no interest in. Then he hands over Kurtz's report to a journalist for publication if required. Marlowe is only left with some personal letters and a photograph of Kurtz's fiancée, and when he visits her more than a year after Kurtz's death, he sees that she is still in deep mourning. She asks Marlowe to repeat Kurtz's final words and he tells her that Kurtz's final word was her name. Joseph Conrad began writing the novella 8 years after returning from his trip up the Congo River. The story was first published as a 3-part serial in 1899 in Blackwoods magazine. In 1902, all 3 parts were included together in the book, Youth, a Narrative, and 2 other stories, published by William Blackwood. The novella was never a big success during Conrad's lifetime. In fact, it received the least commentary from critics when the book was published in 1902, and many criticized it for its insistence upon inexpressible and incomprehensible mystery. Conrad himself did not think much of it and regarded it as a relatively minor work. Over the years, the work has come to be regarded as an important critique of European colonial rule in Africa, especially the exploitation of the Congo by the Belgian Empire. It is also known for its poignant comments on racism and imperialism. Dealing with the themes of morality and power dynamics central, Conrad tries to show that there is little difference between the so-called savages and the so-called civilized people of Europe. He does this by drawing parallels between both Africa and London as being places of darkness. Although Heart of Darkness was not a success upon its publication, by the 1960s it had become required reading in English courses in schools and universities across the world. It has now become one of the most studied, examined, and analyzed works of literature and is regarded by many critics as one of the greatest texts of Western literature. Many scholars have also praised Conrad's accurate description of the horror resulting from the methods and effects of colonialism in the Congo Free State, and the novella's psychological aspects. Critics have interpreted that the story demonstrates Conrad's own skepticism about the moral superiority of Europeans by the way in which he condemns the noble aims of European colonists. Conrad was one of the first men to question the Western idea of progress and development and attack the hypocritical justification of colonialism. Often regarded as one of the best works of fiction in English of the 20th century, the novella has made Joseph Conrad a revered and highly respected literary figure in world literature.